Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I certainly hope your Easter Sunday is going well, because as we are roughly covering at least 7 aspects of Chris's spectacular fantasies and delusions, as well as perhaps his divine worships in the case of Sonic the Hedgehog, we also have to uncover things that Chris is at one point devoted to, but then it's become literally obvious that owing to the fact that nobody's ever thought to bring them up again in one of Chris's live streams, I think it's fair to say that, well, he has completely forgotten about it, and will probably rely on you guys to forget about it as well, because, well, for reasons we'll get into very shortly. Polyamorous marriage. Awesome romps in the hay with Magi-chan as well as Krizel. The polyamorous marriage is an escapist fantasy and maladaptive coping mechanism brainwashed into Chris by the idea guys. Since March 2018, Chris was led to believe he is in a bisexual marriage with fictional OCs, Magi-chan and Krizel Rosechew. They tied the knot with Chris in March, with Sylvana and Mewtwo officially joining in later. In other words, the real sweethearts were the ones he made up all along, alongside a copyrighted Nintendo character. I mean, I've heard of some insane things in my time, ladies and gentlemen, like that one story about a woman who fell in love with the Eiffel Tower, literally. Well, and that's not even like a metaphor for anything. That was a real story that happened. She loved the she really loved the Eiffel Tower. I mean, can you blame her? Oh, but speaking of things that like should like take the tone down just a wee bit. This is Krizel and Magi-chan on Chris's ceiling, so that when he goes to sleep at night, he can directly look up at the ceiling and see his husband and wife. Creeped out yet? You think that's a really stupid idea? So do I. Oh, and actually, I did one thing and I completely screwed up. Okay, maybe that's a little bit better. So there we go. And let's bigger the page one more time. Actually, that might be a bit too big. There we go. Sorry about that. Arguably, this is one of Chris's most bizarre collection of sweethearts to date. Formerly, Chris only desired real-world relationships in the Mailbag 32 7 years prior, when a fan suggested real dolls for companionship. Chris angrily replied that he would never ever settle for such a pretend relationship. Too late for that. His change of heart into accepting his imaginary friends for relationships may have been influenced by subconsciously understanding that he is unlikely to find a real romantic partner at this stage in his life, and with all of his basic baggage being publicly known. On the bright side, his love quest appeared to be finally over. I guess, in a way. As a coping mechanism, the imaginary marriage eventually failed to keep Chris satisfied. By early 2021, Chris was lamenting his loneliness and expressing a desire for real-world relationships. In more ways than one. This can be seen in the Lonely Feelings chat from March, where in a rare moment of self-awareness, he acknowledged that his imaginary friends cannot assuage his loneliness as they are not truly with him. With his fantasies and reality both leaving him, without a satisfying end to the love quest, Chris ultimately resorted to an incestuous affair with his own mother. Chris being in a marriage, my arse. Again, Chris, one would wonder as to why Chris was so even, like, among other things, I suppose. Let's not even think about getting into that. Participating individuals. Chris, Magi-chan, Krizel Rosechew, Mewtwo, Sylvana, and... Wait a minute, why is Pikachu in here as well? Helena, Helena, if you're watching this, how did Chris was there something that Chris just suggested? Are you kidding me? Biography. I go married to Magi-chan, Sonichu, and Krizel Rosechew last March, and then I married Sylvana Rosechew and Mewtwo last June. We all share a polyamorous relationship. Chris explaining his current relationships, also orchestrated by the fact that Magi-chan and Krizel are holding hands. From at least November 2017, the Idea Guys had a significant influence on both Chris's real life and his Sonichu canon. By far, one of the greatest influences they had on Chris's real life was the relationships with his characters. Most of what we understand about these relationships stems from Chris's various texts and drawings. The seeds of Chris's marriage were originally sown when Chris announced in January 2018 that Magi-chan, previously known to be in a relationship with Sylvana, was now married to his mentor, Mewtwo. The Chris Magi-chan Crizel polyamorous relationship/marriage began on the 26th of March 2018, when Chris announced that his sweetheart... Actually, you know what? It's really interesting because I'm actually recording this on the 27th, so yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, would have been 6 whole years. And I'm going to see if we can... Is it possible that we can, Nah, it's probably not a good idea to inquire Chris about this. It's probably not worth it. Chris announced that his sweetheart search was over yet again. He did not disclose, however, that he was now married. He later mentioned that the supposed relationship involves 3 people, from the wording of it as himself and 2 others, implying that he was in a polyamorous marriage relationship at the time. Their identities were not known at the time, and because he claimed that they all knew each other in person, people assumed that Chris was in a relationship with 2 actual people. He later said one of them, Magi-chan, was his loving boyfriend, with the implication that the other, Crizel, was a woman. On the 10th of April 2018, Chris came out as bisexual, apparently after discussion with them. Days later, he uploaded a disturbing video, Dick Licker, That Is I, in which he licked an image of Magi-chan's penis drawn on a wall. He also updated his Facebook to note that he is a bisexual trans woman, instead interested in men and women. He affirmed that he gave oral sex to Magi-chan to a Twitter ween. Apparently, Chris's relationship is not merely polyamorous, but open, as he claims that they have no objection to his return to prostitution. Was this also something that the Idea Guys put into Chris's mind? Because there are certainly a lot of points in which people argue one way or another. Where did the Idea Guys' influences begin, and when did suggestions completely motivated by nothing whatsoever by Chris started coming out into the open? They also seem to be okay with Chris's Facebook and Twitter avatar being fan art from a member of the Quick Protect Squad depicting him being kissed by a female fan, as well as Chris hitting on Brian Frogboy. The reveal. On the 30th of April 2018, Chris introduced his fanbase to Crizel Rosechew, calling her a very close gal, and that he had promised her he would make an amiibo figure of her. He then liked a comment from a fan which congratulated him on revealing one of his significant others. In BD, I'm back Buck, he implied that Magi-chan was the other lover. On the 5th of May, he released a preview of a special mini-comic to be included in Sonichu issue 13. It depicts him, Magi-chan and Crizel Rosechew getting married. The comic is dated the 26th of March, the same date as when Chris announced his sweetheart search to be over. When questioned by a fan about the relationship, considering Magi-chan was married again, Chris replied, "Polyamorous relationships and marriages are very cool there. Sylvana, yes, her name is spelled with a Y, is totally cool, and Crizel and I being part of the wedding tree. Mewtwo was skeptical at first, but he came around and he really likes me too. And you know Mewtwo? He has a good heart, but cross him and you will regret it like Team Rocket did." Veil threats aside, ladies and gentlemen, we may also want to take a look at this. Chris, Magi-chan, and Sylvana together and hugging it out. And it looks as if Chris Chan's head's about to explode. Though I must say, even the including of just married is maybe quite a nice touch, but, well, considering this isn't actually real, make your own comment about it. By late May, the sweetheart's troll status had become obvious, and several pieces of evidence linked them and Chris's recent bizarre content to the Idea Guys, who was thought to have stopped involvement with Chris after being doxxed in January. However, Chris made 2 tweets on the 25th of May acknowledging and calling out the idea guy, yet still referred to Crizel and Magi-chan as his sweethearts, and restated his bisexuality. In the Kopitz interview the next day, at some point in June, Sylvana Rochew and Mewtwo were added to the marriage. It is worth noting that Chris rejected a potential sweetheart in favour of his fictional characters, suggesting that he is happy with his current relationships. Whether or not he's happy to this very day, or if he was satisfied before, then why would he have to? Well, you know the rest. And we also know why that is as well, because he's not particularly happy with the fact that this is just a way of this is the problem as well with Chris trying to make excuses to cope with reality the way he does, is because it ultimately doesn't work, because, you know what, the heart wants what the heart wants. And Chris not being honest with himself and saying that this is simply not really what he wants. What Chris wants is actual affection from an actual living, breathing person. And even Chris says so, he can't be satisfied at the knowledge that none of this makes any sense in reality. Married life. Chris described his marriage in some depth in the Counter Dankula interview of June 2018. I was destined for this relationship, and that's why my past relationships, real and fictional, with the theoretical exes that were trolls and bullies that pretended to be women, that's why they all failed. Excerpt from... Wasn't there one interview that Chris had with Count Dankula, and even the Count himself looked perplexed and completely taken completely off guard by what Chris had said? And I know it's featured in the Gino Samuel documentary at some point, but we will get to that at some point. But I just can't get away from how utterly insane it sounds, because it is. 3rd of August 2018, Magi-chan persuaded Chris to publicly expose the idea guys by chronicling his experiences for future generations. The result was The Awakening of a CPU, a short story. The 26th of February 2019, following the release of Pokemon Detective Pikachu, the second trailer, Chris remarked that husband Mewtwo was indeed involved in the production of the film. Somehow, I don't exactly know why. On the 11th of March 2019, Chris gave the unfortunate news that Mewtwo was struck ill, but was on his way to recovering. Despite being a long-time Pokemon fan, he somehow failed to remember the instant convenience of Pokemon centers. Hey, I've just got this news from Magi-chan. Our hubby Mewtwo has come down with a really bad head virus. He is resting at the Quickfill Basilicom, and he should only be a few days until recovered. Prayers would be appreciated very kindly and much, please, thank you. Lightning, heart, lightning. Again, apparently that's what's needed for recovery of a Pokemon, when literally it's dun 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 ding. You know, it literally takes 6 seconds to heal a Pokemon up. In a letter he had sent to Helena Forenza on the 8th of May 2022, Chris states that he considers her OC Pikachu a part of his harem, although he has seemingly dropped it later on. He has also started to sometimes omit Crizel's name, but as shown a few times, notably in the Persona 5 livestream, he does still consider her his spouse. I don't exactly understand the reasons as to why Chris decided Pikachu was also just again, a character that wasn't even Chris's. You know what I'm saying? And for what they are, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a selection of just things. If you do want to see these as well in more detail, then you're more than free to do so, because, well, it's I think it's the thing to take away from this during the whole Idea Guy saga is the idea that Chris's grasp on reality was so incredibly tenuous before all of this took place, and Chris decided to just accept it no matter what, because maybe Chris was actually perfectly happy with all this. Maybe Chris was in some way completely satisfied with the idea of just completely throwing reality, sound mind, and reason completely out the window, just so that he had somewhere to relax in his mind with something he actually understands and loves. As to whether this is like healthy, it isn't. Not as far as I can work out. If you think this is somehow healthy, then again, you're more than free to do so. But, well, this is, again, considering Chris's situation and the fact that he's sort of been expunged to the land of make-believe until the very end of time, well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope all of you guys have learned something from this article, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.